lender, member FDIC.
You probably don't know this, but every year cities pay out millions of dollars to settle injury claims caused by broken sidewalks. They've left people hobbled, some people even disabled.
But holding cities accountable for the damage done is a lot harder tonight thanks to a new law pushed by a city with the worst sidewalks in the state.
7 investigator Ross Jones standing by live tonight in Detroit with the story. Might have you seeing some red here tonight, Ross.
Stephen, Carolyn, good evening. The city of Detroit pays out almost as much to settle lawsuits over dangerous sidewalks as it does over claims of police misconduct. At least it used to. But now, thanks to a change in state law, the next time you slip and fall over a city sidewalk like this, the city might tell you it's your own fault.
I can go all the way back to when my mom and dad lived.
Most of her neighbors left long ago, but not even bullets through her window could run Shirley out of Detroit. She's lived on the same street, in the same house since the 1960s.
I would love to see the city do well.
But on a sun-drenched afternoon a few years back, while walking down the street right in front of her house, Shirley tripped over one of the countless miles of dilapidated, broken-down sidewalks the city has failed to fix.
And the shoe got caught underneath the sidewalk, which pulled the whole sole off, making me fall down. I broke my arm, I busted my knee, I knocked the front tooth out.
The fall landed the now 70-year-old in the hospital, cost her $900 in out-of-pocket medical expenses, and left her without the use of her right arm for nearly a year. She sued the city for failing to keep the sidewalk maintained and received a $32,000 settlement. In Detroit, dangerous sidewalks have cost taxpayers a fortune. In 2013 alone, while the city cratered towards bankruptcy, it paid out nearly $6 million to men and women injured by broken-down sidewalks. For decades under Michigan law, cities could be held liable only for certain defects that caused injuries. They had to measure at least 2 inches, and you needed to prove they'd been that way for at least a month. In Detroit, where officials admit there are more bad sidewalks than they can afford to repair, Mayor Duggan's office wanted to change the law, making it harder for cities to be held liable for sidewalk injuries. So, Detroit turned to its friends in Lansing. After lobbying by the city, lawmakers introduced House Bill 4686, which would significantly raise the standard for holding a city liable for a sidewalk injury. Under the bill, cities couldn't be held responsible for defects that were deemed open and obvious. In other words, if you could have seen it, you should have seen it. The bill became law last month.
Before this law was enacted, it was extremely difficult to successfully bring a claim against the city or any municipality, and now it's essentially impossible.
Royal Oak attorney Scott Risen has successfully represented dozens of clients injured as a result of dangerous city sidewalks. Cases that today, he says, would be thrown out of court.
If you're a city, a municipality, you have no incentive to do anything. The worse the sidewalk gets, it's open and obvious.
This is such a good piece of legislation.
Butch Hollowell is the chief lawyer for the city of Detroit and helped push the bill through Lansing. He says the law was necessary because of bogus lawsuits being brought by greedy attorneys. He cited this recent case where a plaintiff alleged she tripped because of a dangerous sidewalk. But in hospital records, she told medical staff she tripped over her own shoelace. The case is still ongoing.
You've had a number of attorneys on a daily basis bring fraudulent claims. Those days are over.
But of the 174 settlements paid out by the city over the last 5 years, Hollowell admits there's no evidence that any were fraudulent.
At the time I hit the ground, I felt like in that moment I blacked out.
Cases like Sheila Herring's. When she and her husband's car ran out of gas one night, they were forced to walk home through an unfamiliar, dangerous neighborhood. With her attention elsewhere, she said she wasn't looking for the 5-inch jut in the sidewalk that dropped her to the ground.
I was just screaming. I was letting my husband know something is wrong.
The fall caused permanent degenerative nerve damage in her right arm. Today, she struggles just to lift her purse and one day may not be able to use the arm at all. The city settled her claim for $245,000. If she were to suffer the same fall today under the new law, her attorney says the case would be significantly harder to prove.
Citizens have to exercise ordinary care as they're walking down the sidewalks.
Hollowell says the new law makes sense because it levels the legal playing field, offering cities the same kind of defenses in slip-and-fall claims that private businesses already enjoy.
But we don't pay taxes to private
businesses like we do to cities that we expect are going to maintain our roads and our sidewalks.
And we spend about $3.3 million into repairing the sidewalks.
But if I pay taxes for the city to maintain the sidewalks and I get hurt on one of those sidewalks that wasn't maintained, why shouldn't I be able to hold the city responsible today just as I could have 2 months ago?
You can hold the city responsible. This is what I'm saying. It doesn't prevent you from bringing a lawsuit at all.
But it makes it a lot harder to be successful.
It says you have to prove your case.
Today, Sheila and her husband are still paying off hospital bills from her accident a few years ago. As strange as it sounds, she says she feels lucky. At least the fall happened before the city's push to change the law.
If you didn't get the settlement that you got, if you really were on your own here, what would your life be like?
Oh my God. I believe it would be worse than a nightmare.
Now, even though this piece of legislation, which is now law, was pushed by the city of Detroit, it affects every city in the state. So whether you live in Birmingham, Grosse Pointe, or here in Detroit, the best advice going forward, watch your step. We're live on the city's west side tonight. I'm Ross Jones, 7 Action News.
Sounds so simple, but I guess that's what people will have to do. Thank you so much, Ross. Well, now to the threat of